Camera rolling.
Hi, Braca.
Hi, how are you?
I'm not
Yeah.
just preferring. So, when I ask the questions, this is how I'd like for you to respond. So if I say, I'll ask you what your name is, and you'll say, my name is Braca. So basically, having the question in your answer as you answer back.
Okay.
And where are you coming from today?
I'm coming from Dallas, Texas.
And what brought you all the way from Dallas, Texas to come here?
I came all the way from Dallas because I wanted to get more involved and more versed in the reparations fight. There is a reparations task force that's going on here in California. And as a Texan, I thought it was very important for me to come out and let this particular task force know that Texas is watching them and that we are expecting them to do their due diligence for Black Americans.
Or how long have you been involved or following this pursuit of reparations work?
I'm new to the reparations. The like-minded individuals doing social justice for Black Americans and learning about reparations and genealogy.
And have the issue of reparations been a subject that you have known about or heard about before?
Absolutely. I grew up in a household where my father was very Black conscious. I grew up in a very conscious household. And so my father, we spoke about social justice. I know all of my history, all of our history as Black Americans in this country, and he would often speak about reparations. And my father was my mentor. I looked up to him. And like I said before, he taught me a lot about my history, Black American culture. He just instilled into me Black pride. And so meeting individuals, particularly on Twitter, that had the same like mind or ideology as me, I learned more about the reparations movement, going into my genealogy.
What does the fight for reparations look like in Texas?
Right now, we do have small grassroots organizations. Right now, what we're focusing on there in Texas is trying to get that is for reparations. Right now, we have Sheila Jackson Lee, who we Black Americans, for the most part, that are reparationists. We are unhappy with her, and we are trying to find somebody to replace her because she is in favor of HR 40 bill, just a study. And so we don't feel like we need a study. What is there to study? We have plenty receipts and data that shows the atrocities that Black Americans have gone through in this country.
And then how did you hear about these hearings?
I heard about these hearings just keeping my ear to the streets, just paying attention to the reparations movement, social media, having friends that are from the California area that are reparationists themselves, involved in grassroots themselves. So.
And what do you hope comes out of this task force that you can bring back to Texas, or that Texas can follow suit from?
Specifically, we are looking for tangibles. And I feel what I'm looking for is most important is that reparations is recognized that this is a lineage-based reparations. This is a reparations for Black Americans who were in American chattel slavery. There are also indigenous Black Americans whose land was taken from them that is not really spoken about. There were indigenous Black Americans. Not every Black American was a slave. So that's very important to talk about as well. And so drawn out anymore. If we want to study the economic part of it, we can do that. But what I would like to see is that the focus be on the reparations for lineage base. We don't need to go all the way to 1960. We need to focus on Black Americans who built this country.
And what does reparations look like for you?
To me, reparations looks like to me, there's different types of reparations that need to be had. There's medical reparations. There were so many things that happened to Black Americans with medical experiments, things that they did to Black Americans in this country. We do understand that getting reparations for Black Americans won't end the white supremacy and the white supremacy that is in our system. We understand that, but we also understand that us gaining reparations will give us a leg up ahead. We can get ahead economically and have more power, have more say-so, and have more advantage over and say-so over our lives.
I'm gonna do something I do. I'm gonna take them off when I get serious.
Oh, okay.
My mom gonna say, "Why you got those glasses on?" Yeah, give me power.
All right, Ray Charles.
Chinway.
Chinway, nice to meet you. Khalif.
Philly, right? Philly.
All right.
Camera rolling.
What?
Alright, so like I told Baraka, I'll ask you a question and I'd like for you to answer with the question and the answer. So, what is your name?
My name is Khalif. Khalif, the reparationist.
Can you spell that for me, please?
Khalef.
And your last name?
The reparationist.
And where are you coming from, Philly?
So I'm coming from Philly, Philadelphia.
And what brought you all the way from Philly to the Bay Area?
Reparations. Reparations now.
And what specifically about reparations? Why exactly are you here today?
So the Reparations Task Force has been going on for a while now, and I've been interested. I've been, listening to the hearings, watching the hearings, different things of that nature. So I wanted to see one of the hearings in real time, because in Philadelphia we're doing reparations work to create not only just a task force, but real life transformative policies for Black Americans. So I want to be able to get the antidote up close and personal to kind of get an understanding of what they're saying and doing, and be able to bring those same things back home.
And what has Philly done so far in the pursuit of reparations?
Absolutely nothing. We've been building and organizing, but the city, they built an Octavius Cato statue, who was killed for the right to vote in the city of Philadelphia, but they haven't done anything economically to do to rebuild Philadelphians. Philly is about 50% Black, but the Black Americans are living in. You're familiar with the Good Times theme song, "Scratching and Surviving." So we're not living at the best scenarios, and that's really why I do this work that I'm doing. I look at the economics and the mental capacity of our people have been skewed, and we have to reconstruct and rebuild that.
And are you representing any organization or part of an organization that?
So I would say, I represent a few organizations, but in this manner, now I'm just coming as Khalif the Reparations, just a guy that's just interested in reparations, building with the people. I'm gonna take some of the information back, build with my organizations that I do work with. I do work with Concerned Black American Citizens. I have my organization in Philadelphia, Millennial Juneteenth. We did a lot of work on helping create Juneteenth as a national holiday and a state holiday. But for the most part, today, I'm just here as a guy on a mission to learn, understand, and also, build with the fellow reparationists out here. Maybe two and a half years, but just this reconstruction mindset. I've been on this. I'm 26. I've been on this maybe since I was about 20. So I heard about the hearings. This hearing in particular, or just the hearings in general?
The hearings in general.
So I heard about the hearings in general before they were hearings and before any of that stuff. I heard about AB 3121 and its development. When the grassroots organization, when they were doing their work on it. And then from there, Chairwoman Camilla Moore, I remember when she was voted in as the chairwoman. Before she was the chairwoman, I remember when, they didn't have the people picked for the commission.
Like, was it taught in schools, or did you hear about it in the household, or friends talking about it?
The first person I ever heard say anything about reparations was the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, when he said that in the back of the final call, it said something in regards to Muslims, but when he says Muslims, he said Black Americans, basically. But he's basically saying that we're owed specific land in this state, in this country rather, and then we're also owed our debt, which is the reparations claim. But I wasn't familiar with reparations until that, and then reading and learning Dr. Claude Anderson's.
So then what do you hope happens at the end of this task force, when it's all said and done? What do you hope these findings produce?
I believe that the findings will, one, set a precedent for the rest of the country, the rest of Black America. I like to call Black America the other America, so you probably hear me say that, but just the rest of the other America, so that we can build and that we can, I don't want to say copy, but take some of the fruits of this labor, continuously build and make something out of it. But I think in California, they're setting the groundwork with the documentation, the evidence, and also the numbers. The numbers based off the population. So if you have, just say they got, I believe it's like 2.6 million Black Americans in the state of California. So they're setting the precedent by how much money per person, how much land per person, just in this one particular state. But one thing that's really important that I have to say is that reparations at the state level and at the municipal level is not reparations. That's an atonement for those sins of the dominant society. That's not reparations. That is a starting point. Reparations, pure reparations can only happen at the federal level. States, yes, they did sanction slavery and Jim Crow and redlining. They sanctioned all of these things, but it was the federal government who sanctioned all of this stuff. Who we're going after in this reparations claim is the federal government, because they set the laws and everybody else followed and pursued them.
So then what does reparation look like for you?
So,
Good.
reparations is Reconstruction 2.0, right? So we were supposed to receive 40 acres and a mule. We didn't receive that. So now what we have to do is we have to say, okay, so not only do we need our land, our restitution, because many of our people lost their land to eminent domain, and a whole bunch of, the whole nine on that aspect, but, so we need our land. We need our land because we are the people of the land. But we need our money. We need our cash payment. Because anytime you do work, listen, man, if I do some work for, my Uncle Don, hey, Lee, we need you to do some work. All right, cool. My Uncle Don gonna pay me. If I do some work, I did work. I worked for a state senator before. I was getting paid every week. If I didn't get that check, I would say, where my money at? So if I'm doing labor for hundreds and hundreds of years, I'm not getting paid. I built up the greatest nation that they say of all time, greater than Rome, greater than Sodom and Gomorrah, greater than this country, greater than Israel, greater than Egypt. This is what these people say. I'm just quoting what these quote unquote experts say. But if this is supposed to be the quote unquote greatest nation of all time, and my ancestors built this nation, we could go to DC, we can look at the architecture, we could do the whole 9 yards. But my point in saying all this is that cash payments has to be a part of reparations. Reparations isn't reparations without cash payments. But to even go a step further, so I said restitution, return of the land, cash payment, free education, primarily free HBCUs. I'm an HBCU guy, shout out to Delaware State University, but free education, specifically for Black Americans, and also, there's a host of a few other things we can also add in there in regards to, healthcare for Black Americans, because once you have to start talking about policies, it becomes something different. So a lot of people, even in the quote-unquote political realm, they're not really familiar with transformative policies. So we're just going to focus primarily on the land and the cash payment and the free education. But for me, it's always redevelopment of industries, and that we could talk about that all day. But we have to have industries if we're going to be able to get after our reparations, during our reparations, so yeah.
And
And then coming out the top?
Yes. You white?
No, not at all. We moved to Richmond, the East Bay.
Okay. I'm from Oakland, so.
Oh, you from Oakland? Okay. El Cerrito.
All right.
And all y'all part of like the same grassroots organization, or y'all just like know each other from?
We know each other. We actually came together on Twitter with the whole lineage-based reparations movement.
You're
So,
not rolling. You want those on camera?
Yeah, I should have, my bad.
All right, no, that's
I'm
fine.
sorry.
No, that was
You
my
want
fault.
Just the other side, really like 1 inch, that's fine.
You see these thighs in this picture? Get this together. Y'all have me embarrassed now.
Take 4, take 1. Yeah, it's all yours.
All right, and like that again, tell me who you are and where you're from.
My name is Kamji Ansley, also known as Yaya, and I'm from Richmond, California, born and raised in San Francisco.
And are you coming from Richmond today, or are you coming from somewhere else?
Today I am coming from Richmond.
And how did you hear about the task force?
I heard actually about the task force on Twitter. I was following a hashtag called Secure the Tribe, and within those discussions, they brought up the California Reparations Task Force.
And what is Secure the Tribe? Is that an organization that you're a part of, or just like a hashtag that was?
It's just a hashtag of Black Americans who believe in lineage-based reparations, who come from the killing fields of the U.S. government and before.
And are you representing an organization? Because, I mean, y'all all seem to know each other, so.
Yeah, we are actually individuals. We are not part of any organization. We're just grassroots individuals who are here representing the lineage and fighting for lineage-based reparations. And we found each other on Twitter.
And it seems like Twitter is like the go-to place, just based on the answers that everyone else has gotten or given today, that a lot of this mobilization is happening. So what's been the conversation like on Twitter about reparations?
The conversation on Twitter literally has been around genealogy, tracing your family lineage, trying to figure out exactly where you fit in the American story, looking at the migration patterns, how when you move from state to state, being reclassified racially, and then all of a sudden all being galvanized and classified under one classification of Negro and colored, and then going through everything from Reconstruction to Jim Crow, Black codes, civil rights, and how our families were affected, how land was taken, investments were foreshadowed by states and supported by the federal government.
And how long have you been involved or been following kind of this pursuit of reparations?
Structurally, actually just since January. Hearing about it, I mean, Martin Luther King Jr. said, cut the check. So it's been a discussion on and off, but this concise formulation just since January of 22.
And was reparations ever talked about in your home or in your schools or just in communities that you were part of before you structurally were a part of it?
The first time I heard about reparations actually was in high school. But within the family, it's always been discussed, but more so as in repair and a debt owed.
So then what brought you out today to these hearings? Have you been following them for a long time?
Yes, I have been following them. I went to the reparations hearing that they had in San Francisco at Third Baptist Church, and I was able to speak there. That was when we were really fighting for it to be lineage-based and not race-based. And I've been following it since. our hashtag, Secure the Tribe Online, we did a nationwide pull-up to 28 different states on reparations. We had 5 points that we were pushing for: reparations, delineation, an anti-Black hate crime bill for Black Americans, stopping illegal immigration, and then protection for our children under CPS.
And explain a little bit more about this pull-up march. 28 states involved, but what?
28 states involved. We pulled up to state capitals, we pulled up to federal buildings, we pulled up to national monuments. Some of us actually went to city council meetings, and it was to bring awareness to the reparations fight, state-based and federal-based, to let our lineage know that there is actually a fight out here and that we are fighting for repair and tangibles, cash payment for our work that was done by our ancestors that was never paid. And so we pulled up on September 24th. Actually, we pulled up the entire month of September, but our big bang, where we were in 12 states in one day, was on September 24th. So for us here in California, we pulled up to City Hall in LA on the 24th, and we pulled up to the state capitol in Sacramento on the 24th. Our sister Baraka that you spoke with earlier, she pulled up in Dallas, Texas on that date, which was monumental because Gavin Newsom just happened to be in Austin, Texas that day that they pulled up. So we were at his house in Sacramento and we were in his face in Austin, Texas.
Why that's important?
It's very important because lineage base goes to a specific ethnic group of people who need repair. We are dealing with delineation because since we've had a lot of migration into America starting in the 80s, we have been dealing with this thing of flat blackness, where everyone who comes into the country takes on this identity of a Black American. But there are actually Black Americans here who have to share that title of Blackness with their ethnicity, their race, and their cultural identity. And so when we're dealing with Blackness here in the United States, lineage-based, we're talking about a specific ethnic group of people who come from the Americas. May they have been here before Columbus, or may they have been brought here as enslaved people from the diaspora. We are specifically dealing with repair for those people. So people who migrated into the country, say from the diaspora, from the continent of Africa, or from the West Indies, this form of repair for reparations for this distinct lineage-based people is not for people who immigrated into the country and are calling themselves Black. So that distinction, and it's caused us literally for the last 20 years, we've been facing the fact that as Black Americans, we're going to have to delineate ourselves and separate ourselves from this flat blackness because we are a specific group of people with thousands of inventions and everything that deals with culture, language, religious, customs, dance, food, and a history, a shared history.
I understand what you're saying about how the term Black has kind of been, remixed.
Yes.
Over the years. The Black experience for people who look like me and you, who look like y'all sit down in the audience, like people don't care like if you're from the West Indies, if you're from the continent, if you been born and raised in the States and are descendant of enslaved people, you're Black and you have this experience. So then what does reparations look like if it's delineated in that way?
Okay, well, let me start here. It doesn't look the same to me. Blackness does not look the same to me if you're coming from the diaspora into the country. From the foundation, number one, you're making a choice to migrate into a country that you know have certain customs and traditions when it comes to racial disparities in the country. And so you're making a conscious decision to leave your homeland and to bite the bullet and to come in this country and to make the best out of what you have. from the foundation, that's a completely different ideology from a people who were already living here, who had to deal with colonization, or a people who were stolen from their homeland and brought over here as an enslaved people and had to deal with colonization. Those specific people that I'm talking about, Black Americans, have a specific atrocities towards them, not choice-based. And it's starting from enslavement all the way to present day. And so anyone who decides to jump on this roller coaster of oppression is going to have to go to the back of the line if they want those grievances addressed, because there are millions of us, over 50 million of us, who did not have a objective choice to be in this battle. And so we're at a loss on many different levels. We don't get immigration status. We don't get special loans from being immigrants. We don't get protection from being immigrants. We don't have a homeland that we can go back to. We don't have a homeland that we can make money here and invest in. We're at home. So we're in a completely different situation than anyone who made a conscious decision to come to this country for the American dream.
Is it beyond that? Does it go into mental health? Does it go into, redlining? Does it go into financial education? Does it go into like all these different ways that descendants of African American slaves or enslaved Africans have been affected? What exactly does it look like for you? If at the end of this task force and they come and present their findings and legislation does happen, what then does it realistically look like to you?
Okay. So first of all, from an individual stance of Black Americans here, number one, it is cash payments. There is a debt that is owed. There is a debt that is owed for people who worked and built the economy of this country. That is cash. I don't want a voucher. I don't want trickle-down economics. It starts with cash payment. It starts with a cash payment because a cash payment is owed. And the United States government knew that. With Reconstruction, it was discussed. They said that they needed to repay 40 acres and a mule. That was not received. We have the Freedmen Bank, which was dismantled and robbed. And the United States government supported those actions. We have a loss. For instance, the last study number that the California Task Force put out is discussing the New Deal, which started in 1933, where states and federal governments passed laws where they were not going to give loans and allow blacks to live into certain neighborhoods, where they dismantled the equity in homes based on black neighborhoods, redlining. And between 1933 and 1977, that is $569 billion that is lost by California-only residents, not the United States. In California alone, 44 years, $569 billion were stolen from Black Americans, things they could have gained in equity, neighborhoods they could have lived in, and things like that. That is cash. That is not trickle-down economics. That is not for people of color. That is not minority. That is for Black Americans who suffer financial loss that they cannot hold down to future generations. So the majority of Californians are renting. And if your family has been here, as long as my family has been here, there should be land handed down from generation to generation. I should not struggle to send my children to college because I should be able to pull money out of the equity of my home, but I can't because I was blocked out of that market. And so that is financial repair. When it comes to a general repair, yes, they need to have programs that address mental illness. They need programs to address medical apartheid. We were living in red line districts where a lot of our ancestors, like my mother, died of cancer. My grandmother died of cancer. My aunt died of cancer. They lived their entire lives in San Francisco in the Fillmore and Bayview area, which are redlining districts surrounded by factories and freeways, and the toxins have literally wiped out my family. So there has to be repair for that also. Yeah, I'll talk about housing and how currently it has affected me. My mother purchased a house in 2005. Worked for the state of California for over 30 years, retired. Put over $200,000 cash down on a house that cost $348,000. When she went to Wells Fargo to get the loan for the house, and she's in great standings, Wells Fargo racially had these loans that they always ushered Black Americans into taking. My mother was retired at the time. She took the loan. She bought her dream forever home.
Battery.
They did it to a lot of Black Americans buying homes, especially between the years of 2003, 2005. She was ushered into this loan. She was dying of cancer. And then the housing boom hit, the crash. So in 2008, all the equity in her home was gone. And because of this horrible loan that they had forced her into, her payments for her home went from $608 a month to $2,100 a month while she's battling cancer. She passes away in 2008. And me and my siblings are fighting still to pay this $2,100 a month because this is our inheritance. We're upside down in this home. And so we struggled for the first 2 years after she passed, and then we lost the home. I mean, we're trying to pay our own rents. I had 2 kids in college at the time, and we couldn't hold on to it. So that alone, $200,000 in 2005 became nothing in 2008, and my mom passed away without being able to hand down any inheritance to her children. And this story is over and over and over again in the state of California, just how you'll just go out and because you are a Black American, they find ways to manipulate your dollar and take it away from your children.
And what does it mean to you to be able to come and speak here today and advocate for the redress, for the restitution?
It means everything to me because for many of us, we've done our lineage. And for me alone, I've been able to track back to the 1700s. And I have names, where they lived, what happened to them, how they migrated throughout the United States. Through racial terrorism. My grandfather and grandmother came to California running from racial terrorism in Texas, and all that land gone.
Those promises this time can be fulfilled.
I can't speak on people's promises, but I know that those demands have to be fulfilled. There is no if, and, or but about it. And on a national level and on a state level, this is something that has to be done. It has to be done.
And there's no if.
No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Well done, Sister Yaya. Thank you.
Thank you.
How about this one here? Do you mind looking straight at Chinwei? Just
How are you?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm all right. Now that I use the bathroom.
I appreciate you giving us a platform.
Yeah.
That's good.
All right.
Actually, while we're waiting, so many guys are trying to do this. Can you give me your name?
Yep.
That's just an example, you know what I mean?
Oh,
I also did not have nothing for breakfast, so we don't think
yeah.
All right, so let's get started. Yeah, so tell us who you are.
All right, my name is Fanchin. I'm from Los Angeles, California, and I'm a Black American who can trace their lineages past the 1865 census. And I'm here for support of and demand for reparations.
And what brought you all the way up from LA?
Definitely. I've been following the Reparation Task Force meetings. I went to the one in Los Angeles in September, and I just want to know more information and be able to galvanize more support for reparations by just being active and trying to get more people involved and knowing what's going on.
And are you part of any organizations that you'd like to name?
No, I'm not part of any organization. Just, finding just like-minded people that knows, and want to know more about getting reparations for Black Americans, make sure it's lineage-based as well.
And how long have you been in this pursuit, been fighting for reparations?
Well, I'm a baby, probably less than, I'll say like maybe 10 months. Always though had a feel for human rights and all that stuff, and of course Black Americans' human rights have been violated numerous times and to this day. But reparations is a way to repair most of that, of the harm and trauma that happened to the people. We have to delineate so we can basically portray the people precisely that had these issues during Jim Crow and slavery, and even after slavery as well. We need restitution. We need our cash payments. So I'm definitely here for that.
What does restitution look like beyond the cash payment?
At first I kind of take that question offensive a little bit, because no one asks these other groups, what do it look like for them, because we got a lot of people getting reparations, Jewish people, Native Americans get it, even unauthorized citizens, unauthorized immigrants get them, even money going to Ukraine and all that stuff. So what it looked like for me is just the basic, what you're supposed to give me. I'm tired of having to explain why or how much we need for this, and y'all have it ready for everybody else. So you want to say just be fair, but we definitely owed a lot, and I see cash payments and I see land as being something that can be a start.
That the effects of slavery don't just stop at land being stolen, money not being paid. There's health effects, there's education, there's mental, there's
exactly. We had a lot of separate but unequal education, pathologizing the Black family, and those all are effects of what hasn't been intentionally doing things to your community. And that was federally, statewide, and also locally. So I'm from California, so a lot of people don't think that, slavery is kind of a big deal because this was a free state. But, Biddy Mason was one of these pioneers that came from Georgia as a slave. And we have a lot of stories here in California. A lot of people don't think that, stuff happened, but it's a lot of Black Americans that lost their land that was here earlier than the 1900s. My people came from the Great Migration, but personally, it's a lot of stuff that was just taken from people, and that's an eminent domain.
That's okay.
Do I hold this?
Just look at the camera quickly and see how strong is that backlight. Okay, that's none.
I like one. The conversation, I still don't know the answer.
Dion D. Jenkins.
So that's gonna be D-E-O-N?
D-E-O-N.
Mhm.
Yeah. Later initials D as in dog, last name is Jenkins.
J-E-N-K-I-N.
Just pass it.
So you got 3 words in one
So, okay, for
at
president, right?
gmail.com. Reparations for president at Gmail, yes.
And our reparations, which is reparation,
No shins.
okay, with an S.
Reparations, yes. With an S.
Reparations for president.
Yeah.
All right. What's that? You mind leaning a little bit to your right?
I'm leaning like that.
Like kind of move on with
Gotcha.
inside the chair, yeah.
Oh, cool.
You're right, not the left. Yeah. No, the other side. Right, exactly.
Gotcha.
And you okay. Camera rolling. Pickup's okay.
Okay.
All right. Interview 6, take 1.
All right, so you've been here, well, as I've done the other interviews, yes?
Some of them, yes.
All right, so, I'd like for you to answer with my question within your answer. So if I ask you, what did you have for breakfast, you would say, for breakfast I had.
I haven't had breakfast yet.
So for breakfast, I did not have breakfast.
I did not have breakfast yet.
But I mean, this is just an example that I'd like
Right.
for you to answer. All right, so let's start. Tell us who you are.
My name is Dion D. Jenkins. I'm a reparationist. Ran for president twice in 2015 and 2016, and then again in 2019 and 2020. I was on the ballot this year for U.S. Senate in the state of California. Lost miserably though. Came in last actually, but I was able to get reparations on the ballot. I also am an independent researcher. I concluded that reparations is 4 elements. Every nation in the world has 4 elements in common: a defensive structure, an economy, a place to reside, which is a territory, and last but not least, an access to that same economy, because you can live in the most wealthiest nation in the world and be homeless. So if you don't have access, then you're out of the loop. So I came up with a reparations package entitled Defense Money Land Grants in correspondence with the 4 elements. Yes.
And how did you come to doing research like that? What inspired you to do that?
Right. So as a grassroots hip hop organizer, I've always been the type of person who was really like active as far as politics and stuff like that. Put it in my lyrics and stuff like that. But what made me say, you know what, we need reparations is when I started to really see the despair between white Americans and black Americans. And growing up, you see that all of the time. A lot of noise.
Yeah, and I don't know if they can start that.
Right.
Okay, I think we're good. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so understanding that we built this nation and have not been compensated drove me crazy. Now, it drove me, it really rubbed me the wrong way. So I say, you know, this have to be proven. This is something that we need as a people, and I'm gonna try my best to get it on the ballot.
How long were you working on this research?
Since 2015 all the way up until 2018, so about for 3 years.
Can you say I was working on this research for?
I was working on this research for 3 years.
And are you affiliated with an organization or
No.
even a political party? Or?
No, I am independent. Now, when I ran for president the first 2 times, I did register as a Democrat. I'm not a Democrat, though.
And how long have you been involved in the fight for reparations?
I've been involved since 2015. You know, actually, as far as my heart, probably all my life. Looking at Eyes on the Prize as a kid, you know, my mom used to make me watch that early on. And as a kid, I remember watching that and being like, dang, that's messed up. Something has to be done. Why are these white people allowed to treat us like that? And I had these feelings as a kid, so it never really processed into the reparations movement though until the mid 2015, by 2014, I would say.
And the fight for reparations did lay dormant for several decades, and then it kind of had an uptick. I mean, I know you're talking about 2015 or 2014 when it kind of started up again, but it didn't really uptick until 2020 actually, after the murder of George Floyd. So what has been the conversations, what are the kind of conversations you've been having? What are the talks about reparations? What actions have been taken? And how have people been galvanized now in this fight for reparations?
Right, yeah, on a state level, we have AB 3121. I was a little skeptical about it at first, but then it took me a while to say, you know, we need something. I personally believe this is a federal problem. However, if we could get them both, I'm all for it. So I was never really involved until, well, this is my first meeting actually attending, but I appreciate what they're doing. I just hope that they get it right, you know, and make sure that the compensation is kind of adequate, and it's not just, you know, a little bit of money that people would just like pretty much spend in like two, 3 days, and then it's over with. You know what I'm saying?
And what
if
is
that makes any sense at all?
No, that makes complete sense.
Right.
What does getting it right look like to you?
The 4 elements, understanding that the 14th Amendment is not being practiced, that we are being taxed without representation. There are defensive structures that does not protect Black Americans. There is a whole equal protection clause in the 14th Amendment that's not being practiced. The 14th Amendment in the Constitution is in breach. So to give a balance, there have to be an equal access to power. We have to have a lot of representation. We have to have compensation monetarily. We have to have the building of infrastructure. We have to get land back. A lot of that land is going to have to be taken through eminent domain, just like it was taken from us. Case study, Bruce's Beach. They had to just give it back. There's a whole lot of Bruce's Beaches out here. It's a famous book. I forget the name of the author. It's called Sundown. What's that man's name? Sundown Towns. I forgot that man's name, man. I hate that. I got it. Famous author though. Famous author. But he talks about millions of acres of land being stripped away from Black people through the Civil Rights era and the Jim Crow era, and that has to be compensated. As a matter of fact, Napa was a sundown town. NAPA's acronym is No African People Allowed. That was a sundown town. So a lot of these, it's a lot of compensation that has to take place. A defensive structure in correspondence with the Equals Protection Clause, giving specific allocations for defense for Black Americans. Money, 2 checks. One is a lump sum. Another check never stop. Number 3 is land. And last but not least, another check, but more like a grant given for the building of infrastructure. So let's say if you are a college student or not a college student, but you have a great idea, you say, you know what, I want to build the next Facebook, but I want to make this for Black people, Black Americans. Let's say you say, I want to go to a board and I need these allocations and I need some funding. You could get funding to build that up. Let's say you say, okay, I want to build a school, a hospital. I have a business plan. You can actually get grants. So this money is allocated just for you. This money is allocated just for your business. It's not your personal money. Now your personal money, like I said, comes in 2 checks. It never stops. One and the other one is a lump sum. That's your personal money. That money the government owes you personally. But that third one, that grant, is for the building of infrastructure. So you could do whatever you want to do with your own money. If you want to buy 1,000 sticks of bubble gum, 1 billion bubble wraps, whatever, you can do that. That's your personal money. But there's another check that's allocated only for building of infrastructure because that's needed. And if we don't have that, we really cannot really be made whole as a people. And it's not just a check. It's way bigger than just a check. Otherwise, we'll find ourselves, and our descendants would look back in 100 years and say, those people got it wrong. Why did they do that? You know what I'm saying? Well, we all know the story of Jacob and Esau, right? Esau, being the oldest child, he had a birthright, and you know, in Hebrew culture, the oldest child gets the birthright, the inheritance of the father. Jacob was the younger one, but the more ambitious one, and he understood that Esau was kind of shallow. He didn't really understand his birthright, and he didn't really care about it. So he took advantage of that, and he was able to get Esau to sell away his birthright for some food for that day. We don't want to be in that type of situation. Reparations, the root word is repair. You cannot repair if there is not a fully compensation to be made whole. It's not just a few bucks. We all see Kanye West right now, multi-billionaire, right? Multi-billionaire. And we see what the government can do to him. People who are less rich can have a codification and knock him out the paint. They could say, look, we're not going to take your money. Get your money out of our banks, right? So money is not the end-all, be-all. It is part of it, but it's not the end-all, be-all.
And it seems like your plan looks at reparations pretty holistically, like you've been saying. It's not just the money. So then what does, if reparations is paid out in a way that is in line with your vision for it, in my head it seems like it will rock the foundation of this country to its core, like you would be building a brand new country. With, oh my God, I didn't
Let's put you on a chair.
Right. So, what I was trying to say is, what then does realistically reparations look like for you? And in the real world, like at thinking just about all these different systems that we all have to contend with, what does it look like?
Well, you cannot get reparations without the rebuilding of America. Because right now, we live in a white supremacist society. White people occupy like 95% of the power sources. That's a breach of the Constitution. That's a breach of American rights. That's a breach. If we as Black Americans are going to get equal access to power, equal access to citizenship in our own government that we built, we are going to have to understand that the Equal Protection Clause is being violated. That is a problem. That's a serious problem. And unfortunately, we all know what's next. Either they're going to comply or it's going to be a serious backlash.
And I will leave it right there, sir. Thank you so much.
Get some snacks.
Yes. Good one.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, y'all,
appreciate
it's time to eat.
Appreciate you.
Church is over.
Church over.
Reparations.
Oh, thank you, bro. Appreciate it.
My bad, I forgot.
You did them all
I
too?
forgot this
Yeah.
was on me.
Okay, I'll see you tomorrow.
All right.
Thank you, bro.
Right. How did you hear about the hearings? Or no, let me take that. What brought you to the hearings today, all the way from Elk Grove?
The reason I drove from Elk Grove, California to Oakland, because I thought this was extremely important. They said this was the last reparations task force meeting, public hearing to discuss eligibility requirements. So I wanted to make sure that I had an opportunity to pretty much speak my voice.
And you said that you had read and seen things and seen information that was correct about eligibility requirements. What were you seeing and hearing?
What I saw in social media regarding the eligibility, they said that the maximum was $569 billion. And allocations for the Californians was $223,000. And this was based on the heirs of lineage from 1933 to 1979. And I later on found out that that was misinformation. And the reason I came to actually talk about it, I wanted to discuss the monies, if it was tax-free, and also, since I've been in California since 1985, that would pretty much kind of, exclude me from receiving reparations. But as I said, later on I found out that information was incorrect. So this is why I wanted to come to hear what the eligibility requirements were.
And how long have you been following this fight for reparations or been involved?
I've been following reparations probably about a year, probably about a good year. It's picked up traction, Illinois, recently Boston, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. So California usually sets a high standard, and I really wanted to make sure that I was on board and really wanted to be here to get it firsthand as to what was going on.
And what inspired you to really start following this a year ago? What was the impetus for that?
What inspired me to follow was the fact that I have ancestors who fought in the war, and as I mentioned at the public hearing, my grandmother's mother, when slavery was abolished, she was a toddler. And when they left, they had nowhere to go. So a lot of them, they went to the reservations, but I know for a fact that they lived in boxcars. And after the boxcar, that's horrible. That's a horrible life to live. And also the fact we've been promised and promised and promised and never given. And so I was hopeful this time that with Governor Newsom and the legislators of California that certainly now we can receive reparations since it's taking traction.
Day two, interview two, take one. All right.
Sorry, all that is for us when we're at.
Tell me a little bit
about your family and your lineage. All right, good evening.
Yes.
Welcome. Thank you for being here.
As I said before,
My name
I
is
can tell you about my lineage. I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, with both of my parents, and my grandmother lived
And are you
next
part of
door.
any organizations that is
And
supporting the
I grew up in a segregated
No,
community.
not a part of
Doctors
any
up the street,
organization, but I
everything
definitely
around me
been
was black. The
watching
churches,
social media,
the churches,
trying to stay on top of
everything.
things with
And because my grandmother
And what
lived
brought
next
you all the way
door,
from
of
Elk
course,
Grove
we would have conversations about who
Because
we
it was a
were,
public hearing,
and what happened.
regarding
That's how I found
eligibility
out
requirements.
about my
And
great
I just wanted
grandmother.
clarification
Just lots of stories,
as
and
to what the
also too,
eligibility
remember,
requirements were.
there was a lot of things going on.
I saw some things in
A
the
little girl, a
newspaper,
young
and
girl, when
I
Martin
found
Luther
out
King
that there was a
was
lot of
assassinated,
misinformation.
and I remember that
And so
very
I wanted
clearly.
to
Remember what was
just
going on
spend
that
a
night.
couple of minutes that
So
they
the reason
allowed
I'm here for
to kind of give my
reparations
piece on
for
what I
sure
felt about
is that,
reparations.
again, we've been promised, and I just want to make sure that at least I can say
So
to the
when I ask the question,
ancestors,
I'd like for you to
guess
answer
what?
with the question.
It happened. No, it did not.
Yeah, and that's me. I messed.
But we have something. And I'm still going to voice my opinion because in California, $223,000 will not buy you a house.
What does reparations look like to you? How do you make amends, make atonement, repay descendants of enslaved people, just the harms that have been done because of American chattel slavery?
What reparations means to me and the harm that's been done, honestly, there's no amount of money. There's literally no amount of money. You could give us $500,000. And honestly, the things that were done to my parents, to my grandparents, to my great-grandparents, how they were treated, how my grandfather served in the war. I have a photo with me and him in uniform that my my dad and his uncles and his parents took a picture, and he fought in the war and could come back to a society that treated, that mistreated him, that discriminated against him. So again, there's no amount of money because the harm has been done and they're gone. But at least, I believe, if these reparations were given to us, it would be an opportunity for people for housing, to start businesses, to get out of debt, and free them up, to make some decisions. There may be black people, that may be a ticket for them to leave and go to the motherland and live, because they have open arms for us. That could be a situation, but that's what reparations means. It's the freedom to make some decisions.
Would you feel comfortable sharing that photo?
Sure. This is a picture of my father, my grandfather who served in the war, my aunt, and
Can you actually point it to this camera and again, just point out the people in the photo?
yes, this is my father, my grandmother, my grandfather who served in the war, my aunt, she's 92 years old and she lives in Sioux Falls. They've passed away, my uncle and my aunt, they lived in Detroit. This picture, my dad was born in 1930 and he was about 15 or 16, so this picture was taken in 1946. So we do have pictures, we do have information about our family. This is on my father's side and on my mother's side. So that's one thing that I can say for my family. They're storytellers. They may not have been able to, write things down, but verbal, they would verbalize things, that went on.
You able to orally pass these stories?
Oh, yes, absolutely. As a matter of fact, one of the stories that were passed on, the house that I was born and raised in Memphis is currently occupied. It's the street that I was born in, and they still have some of the families. And my aunt told me, she said, FedEx is the hub in Memphis. And before FedEx, because the house where we live is only like 10 minutes from the airport, it was nothing but cotton fields. And she said, I said, cotton fields? I said, all of this? She said, yes. She said, you could stand up and just turn around in circles, and all you see was cotton. And it was owned by one man, and when he decided he didn't want that, the cotton field, he started selling off plots, and that's how my family obtained a couple of plots where we live, where our house, the family home is currently.
So in talking about your family, it doesn't, and showing this picture, this feels very current to you. Like your family's history is not something that happened years, decades, centuries ago. It very much lives with you now. I think sometimes when we talk about slavery in the Americas, it feels like some distant thing when really, I mean, the abolition of slavery, if you really think about it, was not that long ago.
It's very current to me. I guess the slavery, I become very sensitive to this because last year I heard some things. When I really started, when COVID came about, a lot of people had to be still, and a lot of people were reading more, YouTubing, researching, and I included. And I was listening, and I found information out about the slave that just made me, it hurt me really, really bad, that the transatlantic slave trade, the individuals that were on the ships when they didn't survive, for whatever reason, male or female, when they did not survive on the ships, they were thrown in the water. And it was so many human beings thrown in the water that the sharks knew it. And that there was there's a word I'm trying to use. It can't come to mind, but there were so many bodies thrown in that water that the sharks knew it, and it became a path that the sharks took. And this is true to this day. That very path that the sharks are on started from the bodies that were thrown in the water. This is a fact, that's true. That's painful. That's very, very painful. And you start hearing and reading all this information and the colonization, the Belgian conference, just a lot of things. And I think back of my ancestors, who they were, from West Ghana, from West Africa. And, I just imagine, who they are, what they were doing, where we would be. So yeah, it hits home. It hits home. And it just seems to me that we're the only group of people we've been promised. And for some reason, we're never given. And I understand refugees from other countries. I understand the plight of other countries and why people wish to come to America. I understand that. But I do not understand how people whose blood is not in the ground, in the dirt here, can automatically receive billions of dollars because they're refugees, and we've been here and we helped build this country, and we get treated the way that we treat. That is so unfair. It's insulting. It's very unfair. So I hold my head up high and I pray to the ancestors that the Reparations Task Force will give us what's due all over this country. Not just California, but all over this country. Thank you. Yeah, it's, you can try, I try not to talk about it because I'm emotional about it.
It's an emotional.
It's an emotional subject. It's because the blood of my people. That's
If
enough to
you
make you
mind
cry.
putting it on
So,
the shirt?
I mean, no, I mean,
Yeah, just
We've been talking
flip it,
for
yeah.
2 days, and just the different stories.
Can you guys hear me?
I will hear, yeah, and if I hear any Roddy will.
no, thank you. Thank you. That's the word I want. You know what, I wish I, yes,
Yeah,
you're absolutely right.
migration, yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I'll be quiet. Go on, baby, do your thing.
And also, you told us you were playing on our site work. You're such a young place. Do you get that all the time?
Yeah, actually, just like somebody told me that day.
Yeah.
She was like, "Are you sure you're 21? Are you not 13?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm sure." She's like, "Did you skip school for this?" I was like, "No."
I'm big and grown, I feel within reason, because mama's here.
Right. This will be like my first interview,
Yeah.
just like in this type of setup, so I'm pretty excited.
Cool, I hope it's a good experience. I'm not trying to trap you with no questions. I just want you to speak freely. If I ask you a question, you don't want to answer it, I don't gotta answer it, feel comfortable to speak however you can speak. Just some part of
All right, cool.
Oh, yeah.
Good. It's take 2, interview 3, take 1.
Hey, hey.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm doing great, thank you.
All right, tell us who you are.
My name is Jane Williams.
And then keep your ass on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And, what brought you up today? Where are you coming from?
I'm coming from Elk Grove, California with my mother today.
And are you, what brought you here?
What brought me here today was the fact that my mother brought it up to me previously, and she was discussing that the event would take place, and I was a little iffy about that, but something spoke to me in my heart today and told me, just take a risk and go. And I wasn't even planning on speaking today, but it was calling me, so I followed that, and I'm really glad I did because it just showed me that my voice does matter.
And I want everybody that is gonna do this to see your voice matters too. It doesn't matter how old you are, it doesn't matter how young you are. I was a shy person, and I fought that. And I just said, my voice does matter, so I'm glad.
And how old are you?
My age is 21.
And what did you say in the hearings?
I brought up some points about mental health. And with that money, us Black people could open up mental health facilities. And that could really help us because we do have trauma passed on to us from slavery. And even to this day, it's horrific to even watch some of these movies. Like, I don't even watch them because it's horrifying and it instills fear. When you're not confident, you freeze. And I don't want to have to relive that because my ancestors paid a costly price, and I'm thankful every day that I was born in this time. And so the reason why I came here was so that it gives me hope that we're able to get these reparations. So yeah, it's not going to pay for the pain, but it can advance us.
And what movie specifically are you talking about that would elicit that kind of pain?
So Django, and I want to say 20 Years of Slavery, or what is it?
Oh, 12 Years a Slave.
12 Years a Slave, yes. It's very horrific to see mothers getting separated from their children, people being beaten just for looking at them, people getting killed, trying to free themselves and they get in trouble and they have to die, and everybody else has to watch that. That's traumatic. That's very traumatic, and even if it's on the screen, I don't want to watch anybody get hurt.
These stories kind of have been fictionalized and used for entertainment purposes, but there's still a real story behind it. And that descendants of enslaved people, or just people who have suffered trauma, those stories don't feel like fiction. They're still very real and bring up pain.
Yes, most definitely. And I want everybody to know one thing too. In our school systems, growing up, they only show certain things. It's either Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks. Of course, they bring up slavery, but they never bring up the positives. And if you're a child, you're a Black child or a child of color, you're only seeing the negatives. You're not seeing that we had Black Wall Street. You're not seeing that we come from kings and queens. And they just never show that. And I think it's on purpose because they always show the Renaissance era where they're all in these beautiful outfits, these beautiful palaces, but they never show Black people. And I'm not accusing anybody, but you can see how that may look. And so I want everybody to know we do come from greatness, and it's not just about slavery.
So then what does reparations look like for you? Because I think for a lot of people it is about just like monetarily just a repayment for the work that was done during the period of slavery. But for you it seems like a more holistic thing where you're changing the narrative of Black people in this country.
Yes, most definitely. So my whole thing with the reparations, it would help us tremendously to gain back control. And not full control because we are under a systematic government. And of course that's going to stay here. To accept that, then you know how to move around. So with these reparations, like I said previously, you can open up some mental health places to really help people. Because a lot of us are using substances and we're on social media selling our souls, and that's not the way to do it. And so with these reparations, it's going to give us a sense of empowerment, and with that, we can build from there. And this will help my generation, the generation prior, and the generation under me.
Do you have conversations with your friends or peers about reparations? Is this like a hot topic, like amongst young people?
The reparations is absolutely not something I talk about because my generation really they don't really talk about it, and it's sad because you don't just take what's given, especially if it's scraps. You have to know your worth. You most definitely have to know you're way more than what's been given to you. And it goes deeper than clothes. It goes deeper than the chains and the fast fashion. It has everything to do with yourself, and everything else is just an add-on. And with these reparations, it can most definitely take you way farther than what you ever thought.
called The Ballads. They performed in several shows. They were also in the movie The Knack that was originally made here in 1973. So my lineage is kind of deep here. I'm kind of familiar with the politics and the things that's going on around here. Like I said, I'm a part of the community and a real respected member of the community. I've been here since 1974, and I plan on, staying here the rest of my life.
And are you part of any organizations here in Oakland?
Unfortunately, no. No organizations. I am like I said, member of my community. I was born and raised in West Oakland. My community is the Acorn Community Center. And like I said, I've born and raised there my whole life, so I'm part of a mentorship to where we help with the young people, we help bring them up. We teach them about the trials and the errors and the tribulations and some of the hardships that we had when we were coming up in the late 70s and early 80s. So, we just let them know that, if we did it, you can do it too,
So you grew up in a very black community. West Oakland is black, or what's
Yes, yes. West Oakland was historically black for the simple fact when the migration came, when they did the ports, when they started opening up the ports and started bringing the shipping in, they wanted a lot of black workers to come. So a lot of black people came from the South, including my family. They came from the South, and they went to the Port of Oakland, and they was hiring just like that. So that's why it was a lot of black people in West Oakland during the times of, used to say gentrification and stuff like that. It was predominantly black. West Oakland was, I should say, 60 to 70% black. I grew up in a black community, all black neighborhood, all black schools, all black everything. But during the course of, I should say, the late 90s, during the course of gentrification, everything changed. And it's not nowhere near possible that people could just all lose their businesses and homes and, their sources of income like that overnight. It's like one moment the store is black owned, all of a sudden it's Asian American owned, then they go from Asian American owned to Muslim American, then from Muslim American now to Indian American. So how is all this activity going on and there's no black American prosperity going on, Like I said, I'm a member of the community. I've been trying to start a business over 15 years, and it's impossible for me to get a food business going with the rules and the strict regulations going on. But each time I drive by my neighborhood or my house, you see people selling tacos, you see people selling all kinds of stuff on the corner, and I can't even get a food truck with a license and everything, and I've been in the culinary industry 25 years, So it's a lot that's going on in the city that changed since my birth, and I'm kind of at the point right now where I want to be the forefront and spearhead of the change to get it back to what it used to be and in a better way. And that's why we need our reparations, because just like we built America, America needs a renaissance, and we are the forefront and spearhead of that renaissance. What culture is American culture without black people being a part of it? So now it's time for us to redo America. America is old, it's decrepit, and a lot of the infrastructure is falling apart. But who better to rebuild that than us? You know what I mean? We built this country, we founded this country, we fought in every war in this country since 1526. And who built it? Like, when you look at pictures of New York being built, you see black people on the skyscrapers. When you look at the railroads being built, those are black people on them chain gangs, you know what I mean? Every part of American agriculture have black people fingerprints all over it. When you look at the inventions like the telephone, the light, the subway, that's our stuff, that's our inventions. George Washington Carver, he revolutionized plastic with the soybean. He took the soybean and made a whole new industry out of it. That's ours. So why can't we be the forefront and spearhead to give America this new renaissance? We need a renaissance. When you look at all these other countries, they have bullet trains, they have these new technological skyscrapers that look like works of art carved out of crystal. And look at America, we're starting to look like a third world country. Immigration got our borders open. I'm living in a neighborhood where I see more chickens than cats, you know what I'm saying? And it's not the same. It's like, what is American culture now? When you look at people nowadays, you're like, you're not American. And you hear, oh, I'm this American, that American, that American. Once you take a pledge of allegiance to that flag, you're only American. Mm-hmm.
Like you said, it was a historically black neighborhood of Oakland, not even neighborhood, just part of Oakland. West Oakland was very black. And it was because all these black people were coming from the South. Do you know the history of that migration pattern from the South?
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Okay. Unfortunately, on my mother's side, she was adopted when she was 3 months old, so our tracks got stopped there, but I'm in the process of retracing that, connecting those severed lines. On my dad's side, I traced my lineage back to 1851 Oklahoma, and I read about them, and they came on the Trail of Tears. And if you know about the Trail of Tears were the black people who fought for their freedom in Florida and won. They won their freedom in Florida, and they made a deal with the American government to where they would have their freedom if they left. So that's what the Trail of Tears were. The Trail of Tears were black Americans and natives on that trail from Florida to Oklahoma, which was a free state for Native Americans and blacks, you know? So that's where my family come in, and that's why I trace my family to Oklahoma. And through there, they stayed in Oklahoma. Then I know my dad, his mother moved to Central California. She bought some land out there, somewhere in Delano, around that area, and that's where my dad's family come from. And then my dad, my biological father, because I was raised by two men, I was lucky. My father, then my mother remarried later on. But my biological father, he fought in Vietnam. He fought on the PT boats, and when he passed, we heard about his record that they racked up more kills in Vietnam than any other PT boat. So my dad was a soldier, and he was an American hero. And my stepfather, the man who raised me, James W. Bogan, he was a soldier as well. So honor and pride and integrity was stamped in me, you know.
So this side of reparations runs deeper than just for you. It seems like it holds a very personal place for you.
Yes. Yes. It holds a very special place for me for the simple fact I'm finishing the work that my ancestors didn't do. You know, my dad, he fought for this country. My stepfather, he fought for this country. And if they saw me right now, they'd be proud of me because this is what it's for. You know, this is what it is to be American. You know, you're raised on the past of your ancestors. You're raised on the pain of your parents, and you're also raised in the memory of your forefathers. You know, how could you be of this and you can't talk about the time of your grandparents, very wealthy, and then the Ku Klux Klan threatened them. They threatened my grandfather, and they told him if he wouldn't live the night, so they had to leave in the middle of the night from Arkansas to Berkeley, California. And that's how my roots come out here, you know. This is very, very serious to me for the simple fact I had to watch my mother go through so much suffering, you know. My mother got caught up in the suffering as a black woman. As I said, she was adopted when she was 3 months old. She never knew her biological parents. When she got older, she was always, I should just say, unappreciated by men. And in those times, it was real hard for women. I'm fighting for her. I'm fighting for my father. I'm fighting for the people who suffered. You know, I come from the 80s. I got caught up in that crack era. I lost my mother to that. You know, I got in troubles many times because of that, because of the suffering. You know, what child has to watch his mother suffer at the age of 6, 7, and 8? What child have to watch his mother have a love for something and they love that more than they love their child? You know? How could you speak on somebody who experienced that? You know, my dad always said experience is your best teacher. You're not going to know it till you go through it. So when somebody who's been through it speak upon it, it's good to people to pay attention to it because they know about it. It took me from my mother when I was 3, and she fought for me, and she didn't give me back till I was 5. Then they came back for us again because at that time it was hard for women. Women couldn't get jobs. Women such as yourself, you couldn't get a job. No matter what you knew or who you knew, it was hard for women, you know? So she went through HE, you know, she went through stuff. She had a hard time, and it was just, it's kind of hard for me just to sit up here and talk about that because when you watch that and there's nothing that you can do about it as a man, it destroys you on the inside, you know? As a man, your number one job is to be a protector and a provider, you know? And if I wasn't there to protect and provide for her, that destroys me. It destroys my integrity, it tarnishes my honor, and it diminishes my pride because I wasn't there to protect my mother. Now, people tell me, oh, it wasn't your fault, it wasn't your fault. I'm a man of honor. Everything is my fault, Lord. I take responsibility for it. It's my duty to make it better, you know?